Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing fantastically well today. I wanted to see what do you think about leadership? What what vision do you have of being a leader? I'm going to share with you today some mistakes that I made very early on in my leadership journey so that you don't make them. So that you can learn 20 years worth of knowledge from a former C suite executive, a manager, and a director in a way that will help you fast track how you communicate as a leader. So, when I started off very early on in my career, one of the mistakes that I made as a leader was that I tended to take leadership seriously, but perhaps a little too seriously. And so let me share you a story. I had a scenario happen with a coworker at the time, and what the issue was is that there was a mistake that they made, which was, in the grand scheme of things, was it a big mistake? Somewhat, it was a big mistake. And it was something that I had to talk to them about. I had to pull myself away from being able to treat some patients at the time to go handle this particular mistake that came up. And what I did was when I communicated to the other person about the mistake, I came across them in probably a not so nice way in terms of being a leader. And so the conversation I had was like this is a mistake. This is what happened. Tell me why it happened. And even though at the end of the day, those are the questions that you're probably going to answer, that's okay. You're going to ask those questions whenever somebody makes a mistake. However, there's a different way for you to go about asking those type of questions. So when you have a situation that comes up as a leader and you don't want to make a mistake, this is what I would recommend to do. And I tell this to my clients all the time. If you're really trying to become an amazing leader, there's certain things that you need to try to do. And so if you have a situation that comes up and you need to talk to someone about it, this is what I want you to do instead of the mistake that I mentioned a moment ago. I would ask the person, please tell me about what happened in this particular scenario. And then just be quiet. Don't say anything else. Because what happens oftentimes is that this will give you the opportunity to allow the person to speak. What happens as leaders sometimes, and this is a mistake that people make, and I don't want you to make this mistake, is that we will come in leader mode, right? Leader mode, what's the problem? What's the issue? Why did you do it? And that's not the way that you want to establish yourself as a leader. That's not the way you want to communicate. And that's definitely not the way you want to develop your executive presence. This is the reason why you're watching my channel. And hopefully you're subscribed. But this is something to keep in mind because a lot of people struggle with this. They don't know how to have a conversation with someone and allow them to speak. So before I go into that even more, I want to say hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I want to say hello. We have Najora, we have Axel, Sina, Sakar, and Renee. So hello, welcome. I'm going over some mistakes that I made as a leader in hopes that you will fast track your career and learn from my 20 years of experience so that you don't make these same mistakes as a leader. I shared one mistake I made. And the first mistake is really not being able to communicate as a leader. And I have made that mistake even though I focus with women on leadership and helping them communicate at a higher level. I was not always this way. When I first started out, I didn't know. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so incredibly passionate about being able to help people communicate at that higher level, because a lot of times we're not taught how to do it. We have been placed in some of these professional roles. Oftentimes we perhaps may be first generation professionals. You may be a doctor, you may be a lawyer, you may be an IT engineer, you may be in any other types of fields. So we don't really know how we're supposed to handle these situations eloquently as a leader, and that's what I'm going to share with you. So my first mistake was not communicating like a leader. Leaders are empathetic, and they really do want to know what's going on. When I made a mistake many years ago when I first started in my career, I wasn't as empathetic as I am now. I was more along the lines of, what's the problem? Why did it happen? This is how we're going to fix it. Now, I don't speak that way. I think a lot differently now as a C-suite executive. So I think more in the lines of what happened to the system, what did not work well, and how can we fix it. So when I have that conversation with people, I do genuinely want to know what happened in this situation, because that will tell you a lot about the scenario and what occurred. You may find out information that you did not even know that actually took place that may change your perspective. So instead of coming at them in the form of being a leader that is just being very forceful, you actually will learn a lot, and it will be an opportunity for you to grow and develop your skills and for people to see you in a different light. So when you are working as a leader, make sure you don't make this mistake. Come to someone as you would want them to be spoken to, and don't make the mistake that I made. So I wanted to say hello. There's a couple more people that join. Hello, hello. Thank you all for joining today. I appreciate you all for being here. I want to know from you, what are some questions you have about being a leader, or maybe some challenges you faced as being a leader, perhaps in your professional setting or in your businesses. I'm here to support you. This is an opportunity for you to fast track your careers. You will gain over 20 years of experience from a manager, a director, a public speaker, an executive coach, and a C-suite executive that will accelerate your career growth, which is the reason why I'm here live, so I can make sure I support as many people as I can to really truly communicate at a higher level and become the amazing leaders that they want to be. So leave something in the comments below if you have any questions. I will help you out with that. The second mistake that I made as a leader is it's a big mistake. And I touched on it briefly a moment ago when I talked about the mistake I made in terms of not really presenting myself as a leader and being more empathetic. I wasn't as much at that time. But another mistake that I ended up having and making as a leader is that I did not take time for myself. Now, this may sound like, well, I thought this was more related to employees. Well, ultimately, you can't manage an employee if you can't manage yourself. You have to manage yourself too, a part of that. And I did not do that. I really did not do that. One of the things that happened to me is that when I first worked as a director, I used to work, I can't even tell you all, it was at least 60-hour weeks. Sometimes it ended up being a little more than that. And it's just because when you are developing yourself as a leader, you become very engrossed in what you're doing, and you just work all the time. You're trying to make things perfect. You're trying to do as much as you can. But ultimately, what happens? You end up becoming burnt out, and you are not helping anyone if you can't help yourself. I use the analogy oftentimes on my channel. You've probably seen it, and if you have, just pause for a moment and go do something else and then come back. But the analogy that I use to provide some insight in terms of how important it is for you to take care of yourself is the following. If any of you have ever flown on a plane, you know the pilot will announce on the intercom that if something happens to the plane is going down. The first thing you need to do is to place the oxygen mask on you first before you put it on anybody else. And so I want you to keep that in mind as you are transitioning as leaders, to learn from the mistakes that I made. I made this mistake, and this was a huge mistake that I made. And the reason I mention it is because this mistake, I just was able to resolve this, I would say, within the past 4 years. And so I've been practicing and I've been in leadership roles for many, many years. And it's taken me that long to figure this out. So I want you to not make this mistake, because this mistake will actually impede your growth and cause you to slow down in your growth, because you're going to have that time when you're working so hard that you get to the point where you just can't do it anymore. And so this is a mistake that I don't want you to make. So we talked about 2 mistakes for those of you who are joining. Hello, hello, hello. We have Ciros in EU and Acosta. Hello, thank you for joining today. I've talked about 2 mistakes, leadership mistakes, that I don't want you to make. The first one is to not present yourself as a leader, not being empathetic, and having more of a listening ear to other people and just talking in a better way. So watch the replay and learn a bit more about that. The second one was not to take care of yourself. This is something that I struggled with for so long. I worked so hard, and I had to end up taking a little bit of a break and feeling a bit burnt out. So this is something that comes up. The third leadership mistake that people often make, that I made in the past, and I don't want you to make, and this is one that is, it may cause you to feel some type of way, and I'm sorry in advance, but on this channel I'm going to tell you the real things that happen with leadership, because you all need to know, especially as you're communicating and you're elevating yourself in your careers. I don't want you to be blindsided by things and think that the sky is blue and it's rosy and there's a rainbow and all kinds of things. There are certain situations that happen with leadership that you need to know about, and this is one of them. So one of the mistakes that I made early on in my leadership journey, that happens from time to time, is becoming too trusting of other individuals that you directly work with. More specifically, trusting of your personal information to those individuals. I learned this very early on in my career, and I want to share with you a story that happened to me and why this is something I want you to definitely make sure that you are not making this mistake. I don't want you to make this mistake. Please don't do it. Because I have a video on my YouTube channel that talks a bit more about setting boundaries and being really mindful of those situations. But I want to share with you something that happened to me personally when it comes to this particular scenario. So I had a couple of things going on early on in my career where I was just very, 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 very busy. And I had a conversation with one of my managers at the time, who I felt and thought that I could have a conversation with, a very personal conversation with, about my career goals, because at that particular time in my role, I was actually in the process of transitioning to do something differently. I wanted to be in the same field, but I needed to go into a different location because I was getting married and I knew I was going to have to leave the state that I was working in at the time. And so I had a conversation with my manager, and I spoke with my manager and I explained that this is what's going on. I'm going to be getting married very soon and I'm going to be transitioning to a different location, and etc. And believe it or not, this person that actually hired me and I thought was going to be somebody I could actually share that with and not worry about it being repeated, guess what they did? They repeated it to the CEO of the company, which was ultimately their boss and ultimately my boss as well. So I was a bit confused by that. I didn't understand at that time in my career, because I still was a new manager. I was a director at the time, and I was still kind of new to the role of management. As I mentioned, there's not a book that tells us how we're supposed to conduct ourselves as professionals, which is why I'm speaking with you now. But I really did not understand, why would somebody do that? If someone comes to you in confidence about a specific situation that they're dealing with, why would you, one, talk about it? That's not good. And then why would you, two, tell their boss's boss? Like, why would you do that? So it ended up causing me a bit of issues, because I had to basically go backwards and then have a conversation with the CEO at the time and explain the situation and all of that. But this is a lesson I want you all to learn. You cannot trust people at your job. I'm sorry. There's some people you might be able to trust, but to a limit, unless there is a relationship we have with that person where they have been tested and they have not repeated things that you said. But for the most part, you need to be really, really careful, because people will use your personal information against you in an employment scenario. I have seen it happen so many times. It's sad. So I want to know from you, have you ever experienced this? Have you ever had a situation, even if you're watching the replay or here with me live, have you ever experienced a situation like I did, when you have some information that you share with someone in confidence while you're at work, and this particular person shares your information? Has it happened to you? I've seen it happen to so many people. And as I mentioned, I just shared my story in terms of what happened to me. So put it in the comments below. Let me know if you've experienced this. I know I'm not the only one out here who has been stabbed in the back at work, especially as a manager, as a director. I don't know how many times I've been stabbed in the back. Too many to count. But we can all talk about that another day. This is another lesson for you to learn as you are developing yourself and communicating at a higher level as a leader. So let me know what your thoughts are on that. So I've given you 3 scenarios. And for those of you who are just joining, hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for being here today. We've talked about 3 leadership mistakes that I want you not to make as you are transitioning in your career. The first is to not presenting yourself as a leader, because oftentimes you want to be more empathetic as a leader. I made this mistake. I talked about it. You'll need to watch the live again to see what I said. So that's the first one. The second mistake is to not take care of yourself. So I talked a lot more about that, gave you a story with that scenario so that you can avoid making this mistake. And the third is to not be as trusting with people, especially as it relates to your personal business. Now, I want to know from you. Let me know what you think about these mistakes. What are some mistakes that you have experienced as a leader? Put them in the comments below so we can talk about them. And if you have any questions as it relates to leadership, let me know and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Whether you're here or you're in the live, you're welcome to email me at info@exciteexcellence.org. And we'll have a conversation and we'll talk about where you are. All right, so I have another moment or so. I need to give you one more leadership mistake that I want you to avoid making. Are you ready for it? Because this one is a big one. This one's very, very big. And I hope you all are providing some value here. If this information has been helpful to you and you've gained some insights, feel free to hit the like button. I appreciate some of you have already liked this video. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I provide real life advice, guidance, scenarios, experiences as it relates to being a woman in leadership that will help you be able to elevate your career and help you communicate at a higher level that will help you to increase your salaries, feel more empowered, feel more confident, and do amazing things and go into different roles. Okay, the fourth mistake that I made personally when I was in my leadership journey is to not leave your role when you know it's time to go. I told you this was a big one. This is a very big one. People make this mistake all of the time. When you are in a leadership roles, you tend to try to be there as long as you can. But sometimes what happens is that you see the writing on the wall. When things are not making sense, people are acting completely ridiculous, or perhaps you have your boss that's undermining you. That is what happened in my scenario. You will try to stick around and try to wait and see how things go. Now, with any company or business that you're running, you're going to have your ups and downs. That is part of running a business. That is just how it is. And leadership is like that too. You're going to have ups and you're going to have downs. However, don't make the mistake that I did. I made a mistake where I saw ups and downs and I was being very optimistic, as you should be. But there were times where I felt like there are some very poor decisions that are being made that are impacting me and my team directly that just don't make sense. And so you may have situations that come up where you have those type of decisions being made, and that's okay. None of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes and make maybe the incorrect decisions, even though we have good information. It happens. It happens to the best of us. That's why you try to prepare in advance and make the best decision with the information that you have. However, if you start to notice a repetitive trend of bad decisions being made at your job that are starting to affect the bottom line of your business or the company you work for, if you're privy to that, so this is probably more of a higher level leadership roles when you would know this information. But if you're starting to see decisions that are impacting your bottom line of your business that don't make sense, or you are seeing that it is impacting the morale of your team, that's something to really watch out for. Or you may even see a situation come up where the decisions themselves are impacting the stakeholders or the clients that you are working with. So when you start seeing those 3 type of mistakes come up and you notice they happen, I want to encourage you to take a moment and really pay attention to them because they are red flags. I say this all the time, especially to my clients. It is important to identify those red flags because sometimes those red flags are situations that can be corrected. And then sometimes those red flags are an indication of what is going to happen in the future. And I know in my particular scenario, I noticed a lot of red flags. And I felt like for me at the time in my career that I was being optimistic, but the red flags became overwhelming to the point where I felt those three things that I mentioned to you that you really need to watch out for in terms of how the decisions are being made and what they're impacting was definitely not helping my team, and it definitely was not helping me in the role that I was in. And I stayed around a lot longer than I probably should have. I probably should have resigned and quit that position a bit earlier when I started seeing how ridiculous things were getting, but I stayed. And so that's a mistake. This is a mistake that so many people make, regardless of gender, is to stay in their roles at their jobs longer than what they need to. You know when you need to leave a job, especially when it gets a bit chaotic, contentious, toxic, all the above. So don't stay. Start making a plan. Even if you can't leave at that particular time, you want to develop a plan, start executing it, and plan your next career move, whatever that career move may be. So I want to know from you, has any of this information been helpful? I appreciate you all for being here today. I want to be able to provide you with real support and real scenarios that actually happen as a leader. And these things will come up as you are trying to elevate in your fields, in your specific discipline, to different roles that you plan on trying to accomplish and achieve. So let me know if you have any questions for me whatsoever. I appreciate it. If you're trying to communicate at a higher level, or if you feel like you are in a career role where you're feeling a bit stuck, like you're not making movement and you're not sure, is it me, is it them, I don't know what is going on, then just reach out to me. Email me at info@exciteexcellence.org. I'll be happy to talk to you a bit more about your specific situation that's going on and how I can provide you with some support. Of course, I focus heavily on developing those high-level elite communication skills, and these type of skills will get you the outcome that you are looking for. Oftentimes when we're struggling in our careers, we're not making movement, we're being ignored, or our projects are not going the way we want them to. A lot of it has to do with how we are communicating, which is why I focus so heavily on this, because so many women in leadership really do struggle with this. So let me know if you have any questions as it relates to that. And for those of you who have just joined, hello, hello, hello. I appreciate y'all for being here today. I'm going to share with you 4 leadership mistakes that I personally made that I don't want you to make. The first mistake was to not present myself as a leader and not be empathetic. The second mistake was to not take care of myself. The third mistake that I made was to be too trusting of people. And I'm going to go through these again because I know I kind of messed that one up, but I'm going to go through them again. So let's go back. The 4 leadership mistakes that I want you all to not make in your careers is the following. We're going to go over them again. The first is to not present yourself as a leader. Being empathetic is very important in leadership. The second is to not take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself first. Third is to be too trusting of people, especially with your personal business. Be careful. Don't do that. And number 4 is to not leave a job when you know that you should. So don't make these mistakes. They will impede your career and prevent you from moving forward. If you have any other questions, feel free to let me know. Definitely follow me. I have a masterclass coming up on the 3rd of March that you'll want to join. It is on interview preparation and salary negotiation. I will have a specific video for that here very soon, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Bye for now.